Hi, I'm Purna from Microsoft. Thank you all so much for being here while we chat about advertising for cavemen. But first, I have a question for you. What do diamond rings and oranges have in common? They're both products that became part of our daily lives as a result of their ad campaign. Back in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, De Beers was having trouble selling their diamonds. Their ad agency came up with the now famous slogan, "A diamond is forever," associating it with eternal love. And now, even generations later, we propose with diamond rings. Orange juice, on the other hand, well, back in the 1900s, orange growers in California were facing a huge problem. They were picking more fruit than they were able to sell. What do they do with all of that excess fruit? Well, their ad agency came up with a new use for oranges: juice. And it became so popular that I bet you had some this morning with breakfast. It just goes to show you how powerful advertising is and why it's been used since the time of cavemen. But still, in today's modern world, people are increasingly becoming anti ad. Every place we go, we're inundated with ads. And so then people try and rationalize that. They try and rationalize it by saying that, hey, it's an attention issue, or, humans have less of an attention span than goldfish. Right? Have you heard that? It's not true at all. It's not an attention span issue. Think about this. How many of us like binge watch Netflix or streaming shows every night? Or how many of us will be happy watching long movies like Avengers or Bollywood if you watch that? The truth is, attention span is not an issue. People will spend time and pay attention to what they care about. That's the key. And what people care about and what drives them to take action, it hasn't really changed since the time of cavemen, apart from like the clubs and the fire, and then, of course, that. Times change, but people don't. Ultimately, there's only so many ways to win over people. I want to share that to you via an example. Let's talk about a hit movie, and I would love for you to guess which movie I'm talking about. Okay? The story is about a young male who is sent to live with his aunt or uncle. Into his life comes an older, wise, bearded mentor and some supernatural powers. And of course, a super villain. Am I talking about Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings? Well, if you guessed all of them, you're absolutely right. After all, something that has proven to work in the past will continue to work again, even in completely new forms, which explains why each of those movies went on to make billions and billions of dollars. And I bet if you sat and thought about it, you would be able to come up with another half dozen movies or books that follow a similar storyline. As Claude Hopkins wrote in his book Scientific Advertising, human nature is perpetual, which means the principles of psychology are fixed and enduring. Now, he wrote this book in 1923, almost 100 years ago. And these observations were true, of course, back then in 1923. They were also true at the time of cavemen, and they continue to be true today in our modern world. Which means that all us marketers need to do is to take these persuasion principles that have always appealed to human nature and remix them for today's ad wary customer. And that's what I'll talk to you all about today. I'm going to cover four of my favorite principles, which are bargains, surprise, personality, and inclusion. Let's get started with bargains because, hey, we all like a sale. Ever since cavemen learned to barter, they learned to go back and look for good deals. But what's interesting is that we don't like cheap. We do like getting what we feel is a bargain, no matter what the actual cost is. Here's an example of the dangers of cheap being your core benefit. Now, in 2009, Tata Motors, the same company that owns Jaguar, Land Rover, for example, well, what they wanted to do was create a car specially designed for the Indian market, which is a developing country. People are increasingly looking for ways to get more mobile and get around. You think that having a car at a price point of under $1,500, probably the cheapest car in the world, a pretty good deal, right? For the car you see on your screen, that would be the perfect fit for a company like for a country like India, right? I mean, where I'm from. But in India, having a car is associated with social status. It's associated with prestige. But instead of launching with a marketing campaign that focused on the prestige of being able to earn a new car, their marketing campaigns just went out there and focused on how this was the cheapest car in the world. As you can imagine, it backfired terribly, right? No one wanted to be seen driving the cheapest car in the world. Talk about a prestige killer, right? So, how can you make your next special offer an irresistible bargain? Well, try the word because. Have you heard about the Ellen Langer experiment from the 1970s? Well, let me walk you through it. How the experiment is conducted is that there is a queue at a photocopying machine, and the person tries to see what they can say to convince to cut the line. So they ask different versions of the same question. So the first question that was asked was, "Hey, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the machine?" The success rate, about 60% for that, more than I would imagine. The next version of the question they asked was, "Hey, may I use this Xerox machine because I'm in a rush?" This did really well. It had a 94% success rate. Then they asked a third variation, which was, "Hey, may I use this Xerox machine because I have to make copies?" How do you think that did? It ended up having still a 93% conversion rate. And it all came down to the power of the word because. The experiment essentially found that the probability of people saying yes increases when they're presented with a reason, even if it is a reason as sort of silly as because I have to make copies. How can we apply this to PPC? Well, let me ask you another question. What would you feel if you saw this headline and this ad? All ties on sale, get 80% off. Wouldn't you think that there's something wrong with those ties? Like, this is too good to be true. Something is wrong. Let's see what happens when I add the word because. All ties on sale because we accidentally ordered double the stock. Enjoy the best prices and help free up space in our stock room. Doesn't that take this from too good to be true to too good? Right now, this grabs attention, this becomes relatable, and now it makes it really compelling of like, oh yeah, what a good reason. Great ties, let me go order some and save money. We're all used to being bombarded by sales. Adding a reason for them can help make that sale even more compelling. Next, I want to talk to you about the power of surprise. We might think that people are jaded, they're ad blind, we're all simply unsurprisable. But that's not actually true at all. People are just bored of the same old stuff. We still can surprise and delight. But I want to tell you a little lesser known secret superpower that surprise has. It can turbocharge other emotions, both positive and negative. Right? Do you remember when Netflix like suddenly announced that they were raising prices? Something that would have traditionally just been an annoyance, a price increase, it turned into outraged. People were horrified. It almost seemed like a life or death situation because people were caught by surprise. So the nasty surprise turned annoyance into outrage. But we can still use that same superpower for good to enhance positive sentiment and really drive people to take action. Let's drill down into this a little bit more. What if we were all working for a sports nutrition company and we knew that most of our customers took on average 3 months to finish their box of protein shake? So around the middle of month 2, our company could run an ad like this. Hey, time for more power protein? Get an extra 20% off. Enjoying your protein shakes? Enjoy an additional 20% off if you reorder now. Thank you for being a loyal customer. Boom. Talk about a happy surprise. The customer's probably thinking that they're running out. They're going to start to think about reordering. And then if they saw this ad that not only came at the right time, but it also offered a compelling offer and it showered them with a little love for being loyalty. Well, talk about a super impactful way of increasing lifetime values, right? In every ad effort you make, think about how you can bring the unexpected to people. And then think also about how you can showcase your personality. Uniqueness and personality still matters to us. The ability to stand out through personas that appeals to customers, it still works today. Like whether you think of like the Duracell bunny or Flo or even the Geico caveman, right? To give you some other examples, personas can help make companies more memorable. And they also bring up emotion. After all, we buy on emotion, but we justify with logic. Now, this is almost a cliche at this point, and yet advertising to the logical brain is still the default for many. Why is that? Well, because it's pretty tough not to think of ourselves when we're creating advertising, and we like to think of ourselves as like rational creatures. But let's look at the power of personality. This one is just a classic. Now, the florist could have just listed the various bouquets, the prices, what flowers were used, yawn. Instead, they revealed their very human, very unique personality by talking about a human situation that many have been in. My husband's in it today. And in doing so, they scored both trust and likability points. And we can bring the same thing to our PPC ads. One of my favorite examples comes from Samsung. Now, do you remember like a few years ago when the iPhone 6S had first come out? Samsung at the time had a similarly named model, the S6. And so they ran these PPC ads on iPhone 6S. So every time someone did a search for the iPhone brand, this ad would pop up. Awkward. You obviously mean the S6. It's genius. It's so funny. It's so relatable. It's not mean spirited at all. But they also didn't stop there. Do you remember then when the iPhones had that Bendgate scandal, right? Like they were bending in people's pockets. Well, Samsung had an ad to answer that as well. The S6 goes all the way to the edge without bending. How fun! Personality is additionally helpful because it adds an emotional connection. It helps establish brand preference. So remember, build connection and attachment by letting your personality shine. And for the fourth principle, probably something that's really close to my heart, it's about inclusion. Have you ever had that moment where you felt othered, that feeling of being an outsider, of being left out? maybe it was in high school, getting picked on like a sports team or something like that. Pretty horrible feeling, right? Because since the time of cavemen, all of us humans have felt this need for connection, for inclusion. And that applies to our advertising and marketing efforts as well. Inclusive marketing is the key to loyalty, especially for those of us who are targeting millennials and Gen Z audiences. Let me show you some data. More than 70% of millennials and Gen Z will choose one brand over another if it demonstrates diversity in its promotion. And almost half, like 47% of millennials, say they would choose an inclusive brand over a competitor. So you see, focusing on inclusion can help you future-proof your business. And when it comes to advertising, inclusive advertising, when done authentically, can feel like connection. It can feel like family, producing these feelings of joy and of trust. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer, trust is the #1 indicator of future revenue growth. So if you're not paying attention to how to be inclusive in advertising, you are missing an opportunity. Our research also uncovered that brands representing diversity in their ads are seen as being more authentic and more trustworthy. Now, by whom? Every segment there is. Now, there is this assumption that only like minorities or women might care about this. But the truth is that a majority of all segments say that representing diversity in ads builds trust and are seen as more authentic. That's so powerful, right? Well, how can we apply it to PPC? Step #1, acknowledge that we are human. And as most humans, we all have our blind spots and we all have our unconscious bias. So we need to shine a light on them. Because as an industry, our collective blind spots and unconscious biases can mean that a vast numbers of our customers are underserved. How to find this out? Hey, go and do a simple search. Let's try this together. Now, I tried to search for a couple of different types of keywords. The first one I did was like car insurance for 50 and over. Like, let's look for how the senior market is represented. Do you see any ad here? Nope, not even one. Where are the ads? Or even if I looked for car insurance for seniors, I'd see a lot of ads, but only talking about car insurance. They're not speaking to the senior market. Or if I did another search, if I search for a military discount from cell phone providers, most large providers offer this. Where's their ad? Where is that ad? Right? The good news, though, there is good news in all of this, is that this is low-hanging fruit. These are easy opportunities that all of us have that are low cost, low competition, and ripe for the picking, especially at times like this now, if we're looking for ways to expand the reach, expand our audiences, and find new segments, and get a leg up over our competitors. And let's look at being more inclusive with who we target our ads to. And how do we find this out? It's really simple. You want to start by identifying whose voice is missing. Think of the potential groups who could be accidentally excluded. And again, it varies by business, but if we think about traditional groups, think about gender, age, language spoken, sexual orientation, race, ability. All of these could apply. So next, you want to use those simple tools that you use every day. For example, nothing more simple than Keyword Planner, the most sort of basic of all our tools. It can help you go out there and mine for ideas for inclusive keywords. Use that. Or else dynamic search ads. By the simple fact that it can crawl your landing page and look for themes there, it can help you spot the exclusions that you may have in your keywords or your ad copy. So remember, use DSAs and check how you're doing. And don't forget, if you're a retailer, to optimize your shopping campaigns as well. Question for you. Which ad, if you were looking for left-handed scissors, would you be likely to click on? Probably the ones that actually mention left-handed right there in their title. So a big tip for you for retailers is to make sure you're optimizing your product feed, especially the title. Include the most important details and descriptors right up front. None of this is complicated. It's just a few simple optimizations, but they can yield really big wins and help you grow loyalty, especially because our markets are rapidly becoming more diverse. So definitely try these out. We talked a lot. Let's quickly recap. You want to harness the power of surprise. You want to make a bargain irresistible. You want to showcase your personality, and you want to deliberately include. And while technology has changed dramatically, it turns out that we are more similar to our caveman ancestors than we think, or at least in many of the primal triggers that moved them. So if we're thinking, like, what can I do to appeal to my customers? Remember, all we need to do is take these caveman era principles and remix and reimagine them for today's customers. You got this. Thank you so much.